All right, I think we'll get started. Welcome to our Keyman 14 launch event. This presentation is on Keyman 14 for Android, and it will be presented by Darcy Wong, who's our Android platform lead. I'm Mark Durden. I'm the team lead for Keyman, and Joshua Horton is going to share on the predictive text. That's the dictionary, user dictionary type stuff. Sorry, predictions. I should really say that again, but anyway, I think you get the idea. Do you want to go to the next slide, Darcy? So this is part of a series of seminars that we're giving this week, all about Keyman 14. It's the first time we've done this, so we're learning as we go. The schedule and links for upcoming webinars is at that site, the same site that you got here on, and recordings of all the webinars will be available there as well. This is the Keyman for Android webinar, and we think it will go for about 30 minutes or so, but we'll make sure we have some time for questions at the end of the webinar, so do save those up. And I will hand over now to Darcy. Thank you, Darcy.
Well, thank you all for joining us for this webinar. Today I'm going to be discussing about the Keyman for Android app and give a brief overview on what the app is used for and also some of the new features coming out with 14.0. So the Keyman for Android app is the app that is used for users to install Keyman keyboard packages or Keyman dictionary packages so they can use these tools on their phone. And I note these are the same CAMP files between Keyman for Android that Keyman for iPhone and iPad use. These packages contain JavaScript formats for these touch-optimized keyboards, which is a different keyboard format from the keyboards compiled for desktop, that is Windows, Linux, Mac OS. Now the Keyman for Android app also enables the user to configure these keyboards and use them on their device as a system keyboard, along with any dictionaries that they've installed to use with their keyboard. In this example, you see Amharic that Daniel Jakob has created with the dictionary too. And these are separate packages that are installed so that the users can make use of the features. A last part of the app is that it provides a scratch pad for users to experiment typing in their language. Maybe you're working in a language that has orthography changes or font updates and you want to see how it renders. Does it look correct? Do the users accept what they see as visually correct? And also footnote that as we discuss dictionary packages, the same term is also for lexical models throughout these presentations. So with 14.0, we have a lot of key features. A lot of them are shared with the other Keyman products. So we'll go over them. One is the simpler and smoother keyboard search across all the keyboard or across all the platforms. There's also now a simpler multi-language installation process for keyboards and the dictionaries. And the Keyman app is also now able to be localized with a few of the user interface languages that are contributed on translate.keyman. Previously, it was only available to Keyman for desktop / Keyman for Windows. And with 14.0, we've also consolidated all our crash reporting across all the apps going to sentry.keyman.com. And that gives us one place for the development team to manage the issues and keep track of them. And with 14.0, there's also a lot of improved corrections features, and Joshua Horton will go into those later in this presentation. Some other features that came out, there's now better consistent feel with other messaging apps such as WeChat and Telegram. And there's also an improved loading of the on-screen keyboard, thanks to some Keyman web updates. And there's now a bump in the minimum supported Android version, which is now Android 5.0 Lollipop. Part of the reason we update this each time we do a new release is because older devices get deprecated, and notably for predictive text features, we have to use some language features that aren't supported with the older devices. So now I will go into the simpler keyboard installation process that we see with 14.0. Here is a screenshot of the new menu for users to install a KMP package file. The KMP is the way that we distribute Keyman keyboards or dictionary packages. The contents include the keyboard or the dictionary, along with fonts that are used by the keyboard and along with help documentation. In the first menu option here, this is where they would be able to access the Keyman site, and this is the same search bar, search that all the Keyman apps are using, and this is how they would be able to find available Android Keyman keyboards. Note you can't search for dictionary packages at the moment through that site. This second link is how you would install a KMP file that you've locally downloaded to your device. That can be either through the website you downloaded to your device, or you're sharing a KMP file and distributing it among your peers and saving it to your SD card. And the third menu option here is adding languages to an installed keyboard package. So this is the option for after you've already installed a keyboard package, but you want to associate additional languages to use with that keyboard. One other note about the KMP package file, it does contain metadata information about what specific languages are supported by the particular keyboard or the particular lexical model. This is a screenshot of the old way of searching for the keyboards. It is not smooth and simple. And I will now pull over the emulator. Are you guys able to see this one? I've got a emulator loaded with the 13.0 release of Keyman. And if you wanted to install a keyboard the old way, you'd have to scroll through this super long A through Z list. And it's a list of the catalogs of languages that Keyman has Android keyboards for. And then once you find your language, then you got to drill down to find the keyboard that you got in there. And then once you find that, you got to wonder, okay, now which is the best keyboard to use for this particular language? It was also challenging for users to have to go back and forth between the language names and keyboard names. And sometimes the language would be listed somewhere else in this list. And another example of this challenge is if you wanted to look for an IPA keyboard, you would have to know that we've got it listed under the undetermined language. And also, the previous way of installing keyboards, you would get the keyboard installed along with the font installed separately. But if you wanted to use a different language for that particular keyboard, you have to go back in this list and find it again. So we're getting rid of that. And I'll pull up this emulator. Well, first, this is a screenshot of the new keyboard search, which is here, which again pulls up the same keyman.com website for the keyboards. And in this bar, it's kind of like a Google search for keyboards. So now you can search for a language name, a keyboard name, a country name, a script name, and it should just work. And you'll get a list of results. Here I'm just searching for Kamai, and it shows you, here's the top few list. We got Kamai Encore that our Makra has created, along with some other possible options. So some key takeaways from this improved keyboard search. It is a unified search across the keyboards, languages, scripts, and countries. And when you're searching on your Android phone, the search results are going to present you the keyboards that are available for Android. So it's not going to confuse your users about suggesting desktop keyboards. You're also getting a flat search result with an ordered list based on popularity, and it's weighted by the relevance. That will help your users have an informed choice on what are some good keyboards to start using for a particular language. And with this keyword search, one of the main goals was to have fewer steps to get to the actual install link. And so now the install page will just trigger and install through Keyman if you've already got it installed. I will note there's another way of sharing keyboard links through QR codes. This is not a new feature, but if you have an Android or an iPhone, you can take a snapshot of this QR code and it should pull your device to the same keyboard page for the Command Core keyboard. And that's just another way of simplifying how to share a particular keyboard with other users. Now I'll get into how we've improved the multi-language installation process. So there's a few keyboards that we've got released where it supports many, many languages. And it can be a challenge when users need to associate a particular language with that keyboard so that they can make use of the dictionaries that they want to use. This example is SIL Cameroon QWERTY keyboard. You'll see the same similar list of languages with Azerty. And now when you install a keyboard package, you'll get this quick README intro. And then when the user clicks next, they will get a new screen here, which comes from the metadata file, which displays the list of supported languages for that keyboard package. And here they're able to choose from one to many of the desired languages that they wanted. Previously in 13.0, we would just install the first associated language, which likely was not the one the user wanted to pick. And this menu is also the UI that the user is going to see if they go with the add a language to installed keyboard option from the menu. So once they finally choose the list of language that they want to use with this keyboard, they can hit install, and then the keyboard installs and it pulls up the help documentation. This is the same documentation that's available when you access the keyboard picker and display the help icon on a particular keyboard. And this is the page that gives your users tips on how to get started using the keyboard, what keystrokes to use, and what kind of keyboard it is used for. Another new feature that comes with 14.0 is having localizable user interface. It is a challenge for many users across the world to have Keyman with just English menus, English prompts, and downloads. And so now we've added an option for users to be able to change the user interface language of the Keyman app. And the strings are managed on the site translate.keyman.com. And this is a free website for users to join in translation efforts for a language. And there they can create and submit translations for all the platforms that Keyman supports. And then as translations are completed, we can pull in these strings and incorporate them into the next builds for Keyman for Android. Here is how you would access this from the settings menu. There is a menu to change the display language. And you'll notice it's also got an icon. That way, if you've accidentally changed the UI to something you can't read, you can still recognize how to get back to where you want to go. So once the user selects this menu, you'll see the list of currently available languages in 14.0. The first option is default locale, and that is the default mode that the Keyman app will come up in. So if your device is already set to one of these languages in this list, you should already see the UI strings in your language. Otherwise, you can manually override it to use English, French, German, Khmer, and Obo. And hopefully over time, we can add a lot more languages to this list. And here's an example of how the Keyman app looks in the Khmer locale. thanks to Macro's effort in translating the strings. And this will apply to all the menu items, the user interface notifications when keyboards are downloaded and installed or uninstalled. Another feature in 14.0 is consolidating our crash reporting. Previously in 13.0, we had different tooling to manage all our crash reports, and it got hard to keep track of related issues and just having one site to manage how many issues are affecting each platform. So now it's going to one site, and the Keyman app is automatically reporting these errors, so there's no user action that needs to be happening. But if they desire, they can override that and turn it off in the same settings menu. It's this last option here to disable the crash reports being sent. And these crash reports are consolidated, and it's all anonymous, so there's no identifiable information about the users. But it does have useful information about like the Android version of their device and possibly what keyboard they were using when they experienced a crash. And that helps us to reproduce issues and get them fixed. Joshua Horton is our lead for the predictive text feature, and he will now describe the improvements in 14.0 of the improved corrections, and these are the same in Android and also in the iPhone platforms.
Thank you, Darcy. So we've done a lot of work to improve the quality of predictions and corrections within the system. You may have noted if you made much use of our predictive text in the past, it only really worked well with the last keystroke, which obviously isn't very ideal for most typing scenarios. You start typing a word and you realize early on you made a mistake, and then you can't go back and correct it, or it doesn't automatically correct it in line. You have to actually backspace, which kind of got in the way. Now we can support anything even in the middle of Word in order to be able to make the typing process a lot more smooth. So if the typo happens early on, so long as you don't make a ton of typos so that we can still have an idea what you're trying to type, you'll still get a nice decent suggestion at the end, and it won't interfere with your process. We also prefer to correct for scenarios where maybe you don't type directly on the center of a key. It's pretty hard to always be perfectly accurate hitting the center of each key perfectly every time, especially on smaller touch devices. You're going to be off sometimes. And we keep in mind just how accurate your key presses are for making good decisions. I'm actually going to see if I can steal the screen real quickly here. I've got a copy of the Android emulator up.
Okay.
So let me pull that off. Okay. So here I've got a copy of the emulator. I don't believe the mouse itself shows up, so I'll just narrate where I'm clicking. So I'm going to type a simple L. That one's pretty simple. Here I'm going to type the upper right corner of the K, because sometimes you just miss a little bit. I is pretty close to the K and to the L, so maybe you just didn't get quite far enough. So because it's that corner, it's very close to both the I and to the O. Now, like is a very common word in English, so that's the most highly prioritized suggestion here. But we're close to the O, so why not offer lot and look as viable suggestions as well? Then perhaps I start to type the next letter, and I actually did want to hit a K, and that's part of why I landed there with the I. And now it's like, oh, yeah, that definitely looks like an I, and you can continue typing, other things like that. Boom, likely. So it's able to work well in that scenario. Meanwhile, if instead, again, start with an L, this time I'm going to click the upper left of the K. There are now no suggestions with an O, because we're a lot further away from where that O was. So it's keeping in mind the context of where you're actually pressing to choose what are likely to be better corrections for your scenario. And this adapts to whatever keyboard is loaded with no effort needed by keyboard designers. We take a look at the layout you've given us, and it will adjust and work with that layout with no additional effort required. So where do you press on each key matters, and it will adapt to how the user is actually using and pressing with the device to try to give something that's more pertinent to exactly where it looked like they were trying to press. Corrections will consider the active layout for the active keyboard. It looks at the current layer that you're on, etc. Dictionaries also may preserve typed capitalization now. So like in this example, you can have a capital B starting off a word, and the suggestions that are going to use that capital initial letter correspondingly. If instead we were typing in all capitals here, those suggestions would be all capital. We have this designed to work with proper noun capitalization, as those who are native English speakers would think of it. I'm not sure what the terminology is in other languages, but where you've got that sentence initial single letter capital, that's in place as one style of casing that we'll recognize, and of course, all caps. We have built in a way for that to be customized by lexical model designers, those who write the dictionaries, but it is a fairly involved process, much better left to the lexical models presentation. So we're not going to dive into that at this time. This is Android focused. But there are what we've made sure to keep in mind the different strategies that languages may have in mind for use of capital characters. Now that said, any existing dictionary that may wish to make use of this functionality needs to actually be updated to be able to use it, because there are some languages that use scripts that do have capital versus under lowercase letters, except for that language, that feature isn't used. It's like all uppercase or all lowercase. And we don't wish to impose such uppercase and lowercase functionality on languages where it simply doesn't make sense. And so that is something that is opt-in for dictionary designers. And at this point, I'd like to hand it back off to Darcy.
Okay, this is a screen of one improvement we've made in compatibility with other messaging apps. In 13.0, there was a bug where if you were trying to access the emojis, the whole page would fill up with emojis. But now we've correctly bounded the keyboard in 14.0. We'll go to the next slide. And this is just some quick links on how to install Keyman for Android. It's available on the Play Store, and you can also find it on our keyman.com site at that link. There's also pre-release builds that are available as we get to those alpha and beta stages. Next slide. So that is the end of our overview of the Keyman for Android. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I don't know if this is the right forum. I'm fairly new to this, but how do you get the dictionaries? I assume the predictive text works from the dictionaries. How do you get a dictionary of your local language into it?
That's a good question, John. So if you are developing the dictionary through Keyman Developer, it will compile into the same CAMP file. And from there, you can install it onto your device through those menu options I had shown earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And once you are satisfied with how the dictionary is performing and it's ready to be released, you can submit it to our GitHub repos, and we have SIL staff that will help get that incorporated so that the Keyman servers will deliver that dictionary whenever users install a keyboard of that specific language.
Right, so I assume there's a help somewhere on the website how to, what format it needs to be in and things like that. Yeah.
I believe the links Makra had posted in the chat about some help.keyman tutorials about creating lexical models. Some of those should get into the submission process.
Right, they're called lexical models, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
That. Oh, right, that was in the previous one, was it?
It's in the same chat.
Right. I can't see it at the moment, but anyway, yes. Whoops.
And then once that has been submitted and accepted, we will then automatically publish that, make it available for people who are installing keyboards for that language. So going back to that keyboard search that we were talking about previously, when users select what languages they wish to use a keyboard with, if your dictionary matches one of the languages they select, we will automatically download your dictionary onto their device from that selection.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah. Standardizes the spelling as well in one go. A big issue, I can assure you. When it's not been written down before, you won't believe the variations that are out there. Thank you.
Right, that's one benefit we see with the suggestions is helping people gain literacy and seeing the correct way to spell the words.
Another question about this predictive feature. What if you have a language that has very many, say, verb conjugations, 100,000 forms of the verb? How will that work with that system?
Right. So admittedly, our current system is not particularly well designed for highly agglutinative languages or those with a very complex morphology. We had to pick something to start off with, and a word list is known as one of the simplest ways to be able to support a dictionary system to do predictive text. We absolutely do hope to be able to devote time to models, such as one colleague that we had been working with for predictive text was very interested in finite state transducers and making use of that technology for a more advanced type of lexical model. Unfortunately, his organization is not currently able to fund that initiative, so we're having to wait, and on our end, we need to make space through some of our other initiatives. The LDML is being a very highly prioritized push right now, but we do hope to be able to address that at some point in the future. It's simply a matter of having the manpower and development time. So for now, it's probably going to be just supporting the most commonly appearing ones within the word list, but having to actually list out the different conjugations, which we know is not ideal. It's just that's what we currently support.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your questions. I believe we're out of time now, and the Keyman for macOS presentation is coming up soon. If you have more questions, feel free to post them on the community site forum. You can get to that from the keyman.com site.